Hello, everyone. Welcome to a new episode of Tech Can't Save Us podcast, brought to you by Little Humans. As always, I'm your co-host, Paul Deeb.
I'm William Gadsby-Peat, your other co-host.
And we're joined today by our guest, Dominic Shales, the founder and CEO of Reset Media, here with us today to talk about AI and industrial decarbonization. Thanks for joining us, Dominic.
Thanks very much for having me.
We have to say we met at a lunch about an operating system for companies. That was very, very exciting. And I scooped you up. I was like, this is a guy to talk to about decarbonization. So
yeah, the entrepreneurial operating system sounds very very fancy. I gather you guys are going to move to it.
We're giving it a good old heave.
If they sponsor the podcast, we'll definitely move to it. Just saying. I mean, that's the entrepreneurial spirit.
We like to, subtly, as you just saw, ask people to sponsor a podcast in every episode. It hasn't worked yet, but
we had we once had a Chinese energy drink reach out and offer us £500 for 10 episodes. Why
was I not made?
It was £50.
Why was I not made aware of this?
And I think it claimed to give you bull testosterone as what, like, I translated from Chinese to English their website, and it said that, I mean, like, either Google Translate is not accurate or it was saying bull testosterone.
Ladies and gentlemen, my team is specifically keeping information from me because they know I would have gone for this. They know as soon as I heard bull testosterone, deal me in.
It could have propelled you in more ways than you thought.
Gives you
Red
wings.
Bull only gives you wings.
This gives you anyway, too easy. So welcome, Dominic, and just by way of introduction, obviously you're the founder and CEO of not one, but two purpose-driven companies.
That's right. Yeah, there's Reset Media, which is a publishing business, and then also DUNE Communications, which is a corporate comms agency.
And for the lay people, break down digital publishing and corporate comms. I guess.
So digital publishing, we produce editorial content, and that's through Reset Media, through our own platform, but we also publish other websites. So, for example, evlife.world, which is a website about electric vehicles focused on the Middle East, which is a huge kind of transitionary market for EVs. And breaking news, just about to launch a new website called Climate Solutions News, which will come in the next couple of months, which, as it says, is going to be all about interesting new solutions to the climate challenge and issue.
Wow, is this the first time you're announcing Climate
It is.
Oh.
So also sponsored.
We have an exclusive.
This is our first exclusive in 106 episodes. Is it?
Wait, we had one other. It wasn't as cool as that. That's a very cool exclusive. That's going to be a social clip.
Nice. Well, we'll make sure we shout about that in the post show bits.
And it's a really like, I genuinely like. That is, I've wondered exactly where that website is, because you hear so much about like climate's fucked, we're all in like nothing. It's so, and you have to dig so deep to find the people coming up with solutions to it, and they are all like long white papers, like digestible editorial content of like, here's how we're actually going to beat this thing. Yeah,
that's exactly what we're trying to do. Is kind of, the news brands, the big national newspapers, they do a great job at kind of covering certain things, but they're also sensationalist just by nature. And then there are great B2B titles that also cover things from a particular industry perspective, but there's nothing for the broad public about solutions that make people feel hopeful and enthusiastic about the opportunities to actually tackle climate change. So that's what we're trying to do.
Bringing sexy back to climate solutions.
There you go.
It's, you can use that if you want.
We'd like to, because it's obviously something like near and dear to our hearts. And you're like, where would I donate money or buy stock that I care about? And you just can't, it's like some Swedish decarbonization thing you've never heard of and don't understand. Like, to just get a normal English explanation of it, I'd have invested shares in many more companies.
There's still time.
I'm going to first subscriber on that newsletter. Sold.
Absolutely. As soon as we launch, then hopefully you've got 2 subscribers.
Yes, you do. I should also say you're also the fractional CMO at Nexus Climate. Do you want to break that down for our listeners?
Yeah, so Nexus Climate is a climate innovation firm. We're launching a venture studio for climate tech businesses, particularly focused on kind of the built environment and finding solutions for decarbonising, construction in the built environment and things like that. The emphasis is on kind of Middle East and North Africa, and also the opportunity in the global south is absolutely huge and quite unfulfilled at the moment. So it's likely that a lot of the emphasis is going to be on kind of UAE, Saudi Arabia, and the rest of Middle East and North Africa, which is very cool. So yeah, that's a growing concern at the moment, which is good.
That's really cool. Really cool. Before we move forward, John, I just want to call out the coordination that we have today and the colors. How we did this, but we did it.
It's an audio format, but there are different shades of black and yellow, kind of like
for the YouTube.
The YouTube audience is enjoying it.
Enjoy.
You're kind of muted bumblebee.
Yeah, exactly. Well, cool. Well, first wanted to just kind of like frame things for our audience and just kind of give like a general explanation of industrial decarbonization. Kind of, if you can frame for our audience, like what is the kind of scale of the task and what are some of the core decarbonization strategies that y'all are pursuing?
So probably worth just looking at what industrial means. First of all, industry is kind of companies that make stuff in broad terms. Yeah. So factories, of all sorts, whether it's cement or steel or glass, car makers, all of these kind of things, or kind of the extractive industry, so oil and gas, and these companies that are using huge amounts of resource and energy either to source the product or to make the product into some end, for end use, basically. And one of the things that characterizes all of these processes is the amount of energy that it uses, that they use to make the end product. Mm-hmm. So if you look at cement, so Carbon Re is a company that I work with as a fractional CMO as well. Mm-hmm. And Carbon Re is an industrial AI decarbonisation company. Mm-hmm. And what they do is very, very specific to the cement in that they try and reduce the amount of energy that the cement plant uses to make the cement. Now, before I got involved, I had no idea how much of a problem that actually was. But cement manufacturing is responsible for 8% of all global emissions.
Wow.
Which is absolutely huge. So to put that in context, the aviation business that everyone thinks is the real enemy, that's responsible for around 3% of all emissions. So
aviation is just 3%.
It's just 3%.
Wow.
Yeah. So, you can see the scale of the problem. And actually, there's one factory in China, I can't remember exactly where it is, one cement plant that's responsible on its own for 1% of all global emissions.
Hannah, wow.
And because it's burning this like horrendous coal, and just chucking out the emissions. So, it's a big, big problem. So if we can solve these things, then it's going to make a huge
just shut that one factory down. The
problem is that we need cement, right? And this is the thing about how do we make a transition work to have the products and the solutions that we need, but to do it in a much more effective and cleaner kind of way. So we need buildings, we need the glass, we need the cement, we need all of these kind of things, but you've got to do it in the right kind of way. So that's what industrial decarbonisation is all about. It's trying to reduce the impact of all of these really important processes in a way that we can still carry on using them, but in a much less detrimental kind of way.
And how does AI solve something like that for like a concrete plant? That's really cool. You wouldn't think the AI in the physical world would interact in that way.
Yeah, exactly. And I think what we've come to think of as AI as these large language models, which are doing one particular type of thing. But actually, AI is and I'm not a technical person, by the way, so apologies.
We have that in the notes here.
But what AI can do is take huge amounts of data and crunch that data in a way that no individual or group of humans can do. And it can find patterns and use those patterns to then predict likely outcomes if you do certain things. So in a cement plant, the way that cement is made, or the clinker which goes into making the cement, is you take limestone and various other things and you heat it up to about 1400 degrees. And there are lots and lots of chemical and physical processes that go on within that kiln. All of which can be controlled to a greater or lesser extent. And that then gives you an end product of a certain quality coming out at the end. So what AI can do is take all the input data, such as the amount of energy that's being used, the heat, and make predictions about how you could maintain the same quality but using less energy and using less heat in the process.
And just to put a name, is that material simulation? Is that what that's called? That sort of process of production? That's something different.
It's something a little bit different.
Okay.
So that's more about actually, sort of modelling out how a different material might react under certain different forces.
Mm-hmm.
So that's an interesting thing you can look at with AI is actually, can we create novel materials
Mm-hmm.
that act in the same way as the existing materials,
Mm-hmm.
but are produced in a much more clean and efficient type of way. So you might get to a future where you create something completely different that acts in the same way as cement, but isn't cement and doesn't go through the same physical processes. So that's what AI could potentially also do, like drug companies, right? So drug companies are now using AI to simulate compounds which might respond in the same way or have the same effect on different diseases and things like that.
We went to Sifted and they had a talk on that, but they'd it used to be like almost $2 billion to get a drug to market, and like people are now doing it for like 26 million through those AI models. So it's incredible. Some of the that transition from the virtual to the physical world. There's stuff that you wouldn't think it would like have an impact on the material world, but it's crazy some of the things that people are already doing with and everyone says AI is like only just starting, like 10 years down the line you'll be able to do, and we're at the like Windows 86 beta at the moment. When we get to the MacBook in 20 years, it's going to be really cool to see what smart people are doing with it.
Yeah, exactly.
Wanted to touch on the digital twins piece with Carbon Re, and it's something we touched on in previous episodes, but just wanted to frame that, and specifically how you're using AI to create these digital twins and how that's leading to greater efficiencies in processes, things like that.
So a digital twin is effectively just a mirror operating system. So in a plant, so a cement plant in Carbon Re's case, you have certain data that is coming from the different parts of the plant. The digital twin recreates all of that data and then effectively allows you to model likely outcomes against different variables. So if you turn down the heat, what's likely to happen to the process, and that's how a digital twin works basically.
Fascinating. I'm curious to hear, you're deep in this. It sounds like you have a roadmap. You're starting with cement and then potentially expanding to steel and glass in the future. So you're deep in it, and you can kind of see what's coming down the pike. I guess, what are your predictions for global decarbonization and emissions reduction and climate change generally? Because it feels like you can kind of see the steps that it would take, at least in your sector, to move things a bit.
Yeah, I mean, it's the big question, isn't it? It's how fast can we go? I think if you look at what we need to do, there was the Paris Agreement, which set a roadmap to keep global warming to 1.5 degrees or less above pre-industrial averages. It's not looking great. We're not really kind of tracking against that. I mean, the most likely consensus view is that we're probably looking at about sort of 2.7 to 2.9% at the moment. The IPCC and Imperial College and various others have done lots of modelling. So we're not really on track. There's a lot of emphasis that's been going into net zero by 2040 and 2050, and actually a lot of measures are being pushed back far too long, and we need to be looking at a much shorter time frame. We need to be looking at the 2030 time frame, because there's this I don't know if you've come across this, but the notion of the time value of carbon. So any carbon that's emitted today is going to be, it's effectively the same as emitting 4 times as much in kind of 20 or 30 years time. Right? So because carbon stays in the atmosphere and it has that long-term effect. So we need to stop emitting now, as opposed to leaving it further down the line. And there's been a huge amount of policy emphasis put on things like carbon capture, which really are not there yet. There was there's an assessment that shows that the total amount of carbon that's been captured so far through these technologies is equivalent to about 10 seconds of global emissions.
Wow.
So, it really is not there at scale at the moment. So we need to do everything we can to kind of get there. But then, we shouldn't be too pessimistic about it. You know, all the solutions are there, and actually with the right policy frameworks, with the right kind of incentives and behind it, I think, you know, we can hit that, but that time frame of 2030 is super crucial.
Just a quick follow-up before we move into the next question. I think it's actually a good segue. What's the piece of climate tech that you're most optimistic about? Like you're most excited about? You think it's going to make, you know, such a solid dent? I'm just curious about that.
Carbon green,
I think actually a lot of the really kind of like fundamental, quite boring stuff is going to have the biggest short-term effect, right? Just doing things more effectively and efficiently is going to, you know, if you can get 2%, 3%, 4% improvement today, you know, just by doing things a little bit better, that's by far the most effective way that we can do things. Like, you know, CCS, to get to net zero, we need carbon capture and storage. There's no, you know, it's not going to happen otherwise. It's just not there. You know, the
tech isn't there.
The tech isn't there.
And
or the tech might be there, but the scale isn't there. And you
do
know,
you think it will like get there? Like, is there?
It will get. It definitely will get there. But the amount of money and time and effort that it's going to take to get there is you know, dwarfs anything else that could be done in the short term.
I think just one pause. I'm seeing SD card full on the.
That's the first time we've had that.
I don't know how long that's been there. So just.
Seeing SD card full on.
Oh, okay.
That's
cool.
The first time.
Right.
How long it's been there? That doesn't look like it.
Jokes. Let's see. Okay, so the last thing that was recorded looks like the intro. But you're very much more than welcome to stay longer because there's no one behind you. Yeah.
Okay, it's gonna be
Audio will be shaky.
So apologies for that. I didn't. It's not.
yeah. We've never had that happen before.
So. Let's see.
Is there a way to see?
So is it literally the intro?
Yeah.
It might have recorded more because it's not going to show me the whole thing.
Yeah.
But well done for capturing it now. And I guess you do have a copy on the camera, and then I can't. I need to
No, yeah, no, that's all good.
transfer.
What's the 2251? Is that?
You've got ample. There's
Okay.
so much space on this one.
Gotcha. Normally there's some zero.
Yeah, this will be like some small footage that was on.
Okay.
on
Cool.
WhatsApp.
So we're just mid card.
So, but it's from video footage. So
That was really good too. We were really racing through it in a good way.
I'm so sorry.
No, it's okay. It's okay. Do we want to just try and do like a brief recap? I'm sorry.
We can do
I'm so
that.
sorry. Yeah, never have. I mean, I don't mind going through
Start
from the top.
from the top.
Yeah. I mean, we can take it more brief.
Well, that was a practice run. Now the answers are going to be
Really sorry, that's never happened.
Don't worry.
105 episodes, like it's
so such an
fucking
episode of
damn
fast.
it. No, you were doing fantastic. We were racing through
I
it.
was literally like 10 minutes in. I was like, "This is one of the best episodes of
Yeah, like-
fucking years." Like,
Well, we can.
I've got to remember what I said.
Yeah, we can include. No, but like you were like
no
like,
pressure.
concise, but like to the point, like amazing. So and it was very conversational. So okay, here we go. Hello, everyone. Welcome to an episode of Tech Can't Save Us podcast. Sorry, we're laughing because the SD card just ran out on this episode, and so we're starting over again after 20 minutes of fabulous conversation. But welcome to a new episode of Tech Can't Save Us podcast, brought to you by Literal Humans. As always, I'm Paul David, your co-host. Pass it over to Will.
It's like literally the best 20 minutes of podcast footage we recorded. Like you will not believe the things that were said on that. We're going to try and replicate it for you now, but
I mean, we solved climate change.
We solved climate change in 20 minutes.
We're joined today by Dominic Shales, the founder and CEO of Reset Media, who's going to talk to us about AI once again, deja vu, Groundhog Day, AI and industrial decarbonization. Welcome back to the pod. Dominic.
Thank you very much. Feels like I was just here a minute.
So by way of introduction, wanted to welcome Dominic and mention that Dominic is the founder and CEO of not one, but two purpose-driven companies, Reset Media, digital publisher, and DUNE Communications, a corporate comms agency. Can you break down what those are for us?
Yeah, so Reset Media is, we're a digital publisher. So we publish editorial content on the Reset Media website, but we also publish with other types of publication as well. So we have evlife.world, which is focused on electric vehicles in the Middle East, particularly UAE and Saudi Arabia, which are obviously crucial transition countries for that kind of technology. And breaking news, just about to start publishing a new platform called Climate Solutions News, which will be kind of for the general public, trying to enthuse people about the opportunities and coming technologies that can be brought to the climate challenge, and in a digestible way. There are great media out there for kind of B2B audiences and investor audiences, but nothing really that kind of is dedicated solely for the broad consumer and general public. So hopefully in a couple of months that'll be live, and hopefully a couple of subscribers in the room. So
this is the second time we've had this breaking news on the pod, and the first time was like, holy shit, it's our first ever breaking news exclusive. This is incredible, and it is an incredible probably it is, like as we said, is exactly what I've been looking for as a consumer who cares deeply about climate change. It's very easy to get really doom and gloom because all the news coverage you hear is that we're screwed. And any sort of like solution you read about is some very complex technical white paper about sort of carbon capture in Sweden. To just have like a sort of editorial, hey, this is going to solve the problem, and this is aimed at a consumer audience, I think is brilliant, and definitely something the world's missing.
As I said before, bringing sexy back to climate communication, climate solutions. So, yeah. And also your other role is as fractional CMO at Nexus Climate. If you could break down that role for us as well.
Yeah, so Nexus is a new company. We're an innovation company that's working with startup climate technology businesses. We are launching a venture studio, to get those very early ideas and help to kind of take them from concept through to potential investable business. And further down the line, there'll be a fund that goes against that as well, which we'll raise for probably during the course of next year. And the emphasis is on the Middle East and North Africa, where there's great opportunity. There's infinite ambition and financing and great opportunities which haven't really been taken into their full fruition yet. So that's what we're focusing on.
It's very cool, and it's exciting too in the places where like the impacts of climate change are going to be massive, to like kind of focus there and drive entrepreneurship and investment. That's really cool to focus there.
Yeah. You sell the EVs and climate tech to the Middle East. That's going to solve a lot of problems.
Sure.
Yeah. We'll just want to frame things for our audience, and we're going to talk a lot about cement. We're going to talk about steel and decarbonization. So just give our audience kind of a general explanation of industrial decarbonization and kind of, outline for them the scale of the task and the various decarbonization strategies that you're pursuing.
So the other hat that I wear is with a company called Carbon Re, which is an industrial AI company. Just let's look at what industrial means first of all. So it's anything that's kind of producing stuff, manufacturing things. So it could be cement and glass and steel, as you mentioned. It could be cars. It could be fridges. Any of these sort of companies that take or use a huge amount of energy to convert substance into kind of end products. It could be oil and gas, it could be mining, all of these kind of things. And these companies, these sectors emit huge amounts of carbon into the atmosphere. So cement, which is the emphasis that we have at Carbon Re, just by way of comparison, is responsible for 8% of all global emissions. And the aviation business, which is often seen as the kind of, a particularly polluting kind of industry, is only about 3%. So
I'm just as shocked as I was the first time.
Yeah, it's kind of, the manufacturing process just dwarfs a lot of other sectors. And there's actually one cement plant in China. I'm not exactly sure where, but it's responsible for 1% of all global emissions just on its own.
Because it's like a Changsao thing, like that place where the rain's so bad that it strips paint off of the car. Yeah, that's I bet it's because of that. So but it's responsible for 1% of all of local. Is cement the biggest contributor?
So cement and steel are roughly equivalent. So they're about 8% each. And it's basically anything that uses a huge amount of energy to create extreme heat as part of the process. So if you've got, part of the cement production process uses a lot of heat to take limestone and other things and turn it into the clinker, which then forms the basis of the cement. Steel, obviously, you're melting down, the ore and creating the steel from there. So, the way that these things are produced is intrinsically hugely energy demanding. And anything that can be done to reduce that is going to be very good in terms of emissions and overall energy usage.
I appreciate this quote that they all have. I think it kind of captures the scale of what's going on there. Over the next 40 years, the equivalent of a city the size of Paris is expected to be built every week. Like that, like just, oh my gosh, like people, traveled and visited Paris. Like that really shows you, the impact that like the cement industry, the steel industry is going to continue to have on, and, we need to develop, we need to grow, but like, how do we temper that with decarbonization?
Yeah. And actually, when you look at where that's occurring, it's actually, in the Middle East, in the global south, more generally. Now, if you look at Saudi Arabia, I mean, they've got these incredible plans for, NEOM and the line, which, is going to be a city that's kind of, 70 kilometers long. And, and actually you think it's science fiction stuff, but it's really happening and it's really being, it's going to really be built. And similarly across Africa, there are these new cities that are springing up and new visions of, urbanization that are coming, and all of that needs to be built. So
I've heard from a couple of, like I know in the climate sector, that kind of like that sector of the world has basically just accepted that the things are going to rise a certain amount in terms of heat, and they're just urban planning how they deal with the fact that they're almost in an unlivable environment. But like that's incredible. Like the built environment is the solution to that problem.
I mean, there's huge amounts that can be done through the city planning. It's probably worth saying I'm not a technologist, so I don't know. I don't know exactly how a lot of these things are going to be done. But the way that the cities are planned is one thing. The way that they're actually physically built is another, and then the materials that go into them is the final bit. But and all of those three things need to work together to be as low carbon as possible.
I saw today that like in the Sudan, like they're predicting 45, C heat, and that they're like keeping kids home from school and encouraging parents to keep kids inside and stuff like that. And to your point, I was thinking about like, places like Chicago or Toronto are constructed so they have like underground tunnels for when it's so cold, and wondering if we're going to have a similar situation in places where it's just too hot. And, and we're building, to cool places, or underground tunnels to cool, people and work environments, things like that. It's like really fascinating to see how we're going to mitigate, what's coming. So.
It'd be great if we didn't have to mitigate that, right?
Exactly. I've worked in 40-degree heat in Australia, and it is unfathomably hot. Like it literally, anything that's outside, you're in an oven. Like you're genuinely in the low set. If you put your oven on low heat to keep food warm, it's around 40-50 degrees. Like that's just the outside temperature of everything. It's wild that there are parts of the world that are now regularly seeing that as their temperature, and terrifying.
Agree.
So obviously, folk often think of like AI as the virtual world. Like, what are some of the ways that it can kind of be impacting some of these very physical, real processes in the physical world?
So yeah, most people think about AI in the context of what's been going on in the last year with large language models, with OpenAI and Gemini and all of these kind of things. But actually, that's just the tip of what AI can actually do. As one particular use case that's obviously very accessible to a large number of people. But the way that AI can work is taking huge numbers of data points from anything and finding models and patterns within that data that can then predict or model different outcomes. So if you look at a cement plant, there are literally thousands of variables that can be monitored within the manufacturing process. That data changes literally from second to second. Whether that's the amount of heat that's being used, the amount of oxygen that's going into the kiln, all of these things. A human can, to some extent, kind of get to know the machine and be able to adapt things. In the same way as you're driving a car, you might be able to kind of like push the accelerator or the brake or whatever. But what AI can do is take all of that data, crunch it very fast, and come up with predictive scenarios, so that the plant can then be optimized to use less energy to achieve the same kind of product, for example.
Is this a digital twin piece,
so the digital twin effectively is just a literal copy of the way that the plant itself is operating. And that digital twin can use the AI-based software to make predictions about how the outcome might change if the variables are changed. So if you reduce the amount of heat and energy used, how's that going to affect the overall product quality, for example?
Yeah. As a former power user of SimCity, that is very, very cool to me.
Yeah. Well, and it sounds like you've got kind of a roadmap. So you're starting with cement and then moving into steel and glass, and so you can kind of
and they're very different in terms of the specifics, but they're very similar in certain respects in that they use high heat, huge amounts of energy, and so the learnings from one sector can be taken to some extent and used in the other sectors. So, but cement is it is. Concrete itself is the second most used product in the world after water. So it seems like a good place to start.
Yeah, thank God it wasn't Coca-Cola.
Yeah, gosh.
But and to the point we were talking earlier about the website you're launching, this is really cool. Like, you think of AI and you think of all of the terrible uses of it or the stupid uses of it with like really bad AI. It's really cool to know that people are using this new technology that humanity has discovered to try and solve the biggest problem it's facing. And I was unaware of it until we started prepping for this podcast. So yeah.
And I think the other area where AI can be really exciting is in helping to create completely new materials. So yes, we need to keep using glass and steel and cement and in order to create these new cities. But wouldn't it be cool if there was something else that worked just as well as these existing materials that could be created with low carbon or zero carbon? And in the same way as like the pharmaceutical companies are using AI to develop new drugs, new compounds that might work in the same way as existing ones, and reducing the time to do that and the cost to do that, that's this new area of sort of material science using AI is going to be hugely exciting, I think.
Yeah, sort of a question that I had, and it's like just it's maybe even a silly question, but we talked about like industrialization and cement and needing cement. So like sort of maybe a layperson would think like, do we need cement, or like is there a better alternative? Is there like a clean cement, or like could we just walk around on grass? Like like genuinely, like what is the outlook for that in terms of like alternatives to cement or cleaner, better cements? Like,
I mean, there's all sorts of stuff that can be used, but it's whether it can be used, produced at scale, cost effectively, and sustainably. So you could use wood, but actually then you need to grow a lot of trees, and you need to cut down those trees. And actually, is it going to be more sustainable in the long term to do that? You've got to have things which can perform at certain requirements, right? You need to, if you're building a skyscraper, it has to stand up, it has to be strong, it can't fall down,
tip over.
It can't tip out so you need materials that have certain characteristics, and that's where imagine you could create something that performs the same way but do it completely differently with a different mix of materials and things. It'd be incredible.
Is that part of the, I'm conscious that a lot of the climate change models include things that haven't been existed yet or haven't been invented yet, but are, predicted to be invented and refined and things like that. And are different materials part of that, like new materials that are less?
So there's a lot of emphasis on using AI to come up with these new materials.
Yeah.
So, for example, in Berkeley in the States, there's a new department of material science, which is looking at this kind of stuff.
Yeah. Go Bears, my alma mater.
Very good. So, you know, and there's more and more people doing looking into these kind of things. But you know, everyone can predict where we want to get to, but actually how we get there and what form that's going to take is much more difficult. So,
sure.
But it's definitely going to form part of the future.
Well, good segue. So you're kind of at the cutting edge. You're looking at like cement, you're looking at steel, you're looking at glass, and kind of trying to, you know, pave this path forward, to use this cement analogy. But wanted to get kind of your sense about, you know, your predictions about global decarbonization efforts, and just climate change, sort of mitigation in general. Are we just going to completely blow past the Paris Agreement? What does that look like? And what's your sort of outlook for the future here?
So the Paris Agreement set this target of 1.5 degrees centigrade or less above pre-industrial averages. And it doesn't look great. We're not going to hit that unless something really, you know, miraculous happens. But I think, you know, the consensus opinion is that we're probably going to hit somewhere between, you know, 2.7, 2.9, something like that, according to IPCC and various other places. So, you know, it's not looking good. However, there are the solutions there. And what really, you know, I think all the policy measures should be focused on deploying things that can succeed now in the short term rather than pushing them back, you know, nearer to 2040, 2050, which is when people are talking about, you know, net zero timelines, etc. So there's something called the time value of carbon. Yeah. So for every bit of carbon that we release into the atmosphere now, in like 20 or 30 years time, that's going to be equivalent to four times the amount being released at that stage. So, you know, because it lingers in the atmosphere. So we need to stop the emissions now to give us a chance to accelerate the decarbonisation further down the track. There are lots and lots of technologies that can be deployed now. So, you know, like AI, that can be focused on the efficiency and having, you know, small percentage efficiency gains. The policy environments put too much emphasis, I think, on things like carbon capture and storage, which really are quite untested at scale at the moment. The technologies can work, but just rolling it out is hugely cost prohibitive, you know, and is really not going to solve the issue at any great scale. So I read a stat the other day that said that so far carbon capture and storage has captured about the equivalent of 10 seconds of global emissions. So, wow. You know, it's really not there yet. Yeah. But there are things that we can do at scale now that need to be incentivized and by policy frameworks, and, you know, get people on board to start doing those things now.
Okay. Sorry. I was going to just ask, like, curious about how you felt about COP28 and the most recent sort of attempt to.
Yeah, well, you know, COP28 had a lot of flack. Yeah. And I think quite a lot of it unfairly. I think this transition away from fossil fuels was a big move in terms of getting the wording agreed by all those countries. You know, it hasn't been achieved before.
Sure.
It wasn't the final wording that everybody would have wanted, which was phasing out of fossil fuels, but the transition away from is a pretty good, you know, sense that we need to go in that direction. So I think to that extent it was actually successful. And there were other pledges and initiatives that came out as part of COP as well. They were just pledges, right? And that's the thing; they've got to be implemented to have any meaningful impact. So that's the thing I think now that needs to happen. There needs to be followed through, and there needs to be real kind of policy impetus put behind all of those things.
I think that's the sticky bit. Like there's always like these grand pledges that come out of these meetings and stuff like that. And it's like, at what point is the red light on and up that we're like, okay, we've moved past pledges. These are firm commitments that are trackable and measurable and sort of.
I was just saying, a website I've always wished existed for your next one, is just a long list of this is what this country has said it's going to do, and here's how much they're actually trying or full of shit. Because I like it, and I think there's no worse example of this in the Conservative government in the UK of like, we're just going to pledge to these things because we know we're going to get a absolute shit ton of bad press if we don't. And then we're going to do very, very little to actually like really try and execute this because it looks really hard and complicated and expensive. And I whenever I see those cops, I always think, cool, yeah, all of this money's been like, but then when you hear from activists on the ground about like actually getting that money, it doesn't sound like there's a big gap between the promise and the execution. So yeah. How full of shit are they.com? And just a tracker.
I'm going to register that.
Yeah.
Check if it's available here. Go down here.
I mean, well, we're just spitballing ideas I've had in the pub. The other one was like, how evil are they? Where you just put in a brand and it just tells you like, oh, this is why Coca-Cola is super problematic.
Other soft drinks are available.
Oh, the soft drinks are available. Sorry.
How full of shit are they is actually available.
Is it?
I'm just saying, like, we could
better get it before this goes
Yeah,
down.
all three of us could do it.
Okay, that's good. What was the other one?
How evil are they?
How evil are they? Okay, cool.
So I can be our side hustle.
I'm all about prospectively buying. Yeah, they're both available.
There you go.
I mean, that's it. Okay, yeah. Well, we can table that. So this isn't live, so we have time to buy these.
Edit this out.
Yeah. No one should know.
But I mean, just moving on to sort of that kind of fight in the party against climate change. So I think I've certainly felt this personally, and I'm obviously not actually involved in it. But just as a sort of consumer, it's like it is kind of hard to be optimistic about it from some of the headlines you read. But you have like a real belief in optimism and a sense of individual agency and responsibility. What's kind of your advice for creating campaigns, initiatives, and empowering people to take action and giving them that hope that they actually can make a tangible difference?
So I think there's a couple of things in there. One, I think it's not necessarily just individual action and agency. I think it's actually a collective responsibility. And there are three kind of constituent parts to that all interlink. One is, obviously the individual and society at large, right? We need to step up and we all need to do our bit. And, it does make a difference if we recycle and we, take public transport and all the rest of it, right? But that's not going to be the be all and end all. Businesses have to take a massive lead in it, and then government, by setting regulation and frameworks and policy and things like that. And all of those three overlap, right? And none of them can exist individually. Governments aren't going to take action if they don't think the populations with them are going to respond. Businesses aren't going to do it, and consumers aren't going to buy the product, etc. So, where does it start? Probably starts with the consumer because they influence the other audiences. There has to be a willingness to engage around policy topics and with products that are, and services which are thinking that way and more beneficial to the environment. I think the other thing is that coming back to this climate of fear and desperation around climate, the media generally has been focused on telling the stories of fear, and it's human nature. Unfortunately, we respond more to fear
Negativity
and negativity than we do to positivity. So, if you're a media business, then you're gonna go with that, right? So there was a really interesting study that was done in 2018 by Yale. You do your postgrad there? No.
Harvard. Easy.
And so Yale did a study which looked at the hope gap, right? And it looked at the
specifically around climate change.
Around climate change, and it measured over a few years people's feelings of hope and hopefulness versus their feeling of anxiety around the climate. And what it found was that there was, the media was responsible to a large extent about creating this culture of anxiety that, climate was going to destroy our lives and there was nothing we could do about it, etc. And that it was also enlarging this hope gap. So people feeling less hopeful and more anxious as time went on. It's no coincidence that actually there was a big uptick in anxiety and a big turn in hope in 2016 when Donald Trump came in and started, saying negative stuff, about all that. So I'd really love for Yale to do a follow-up on that. I've not seen anything to see where we are today, but I think that's super important that we try and reduce that hope gap and reduce anxiety and increase hope, because then I think that will start to help things moving forward.
I feel like Yale knows a thing or two about hope being at the number 2 university in America. So just want to throw that shots fired, Yale, but also sponsor our podcast.
I don't think this audience will have heard the first sponsor our podcast. That joke doesn't matter.
Fair, I guess.
But, no, I do think it is like it's funny because there's actually quite an overlap between these two groups. But the people that want you to not believe that voting matters, and the people that want you to believe that you cannot contribute to climate change, it's become a real thing of cynicism. And I've had a lot of conversations even with personal friends, and they usually listen to Joe Rogan, but they're just like, oh, I can't make a difference, and it's all bullshit anyway, and they're all corrupt. It's like, no. There are many problems with politics and climate change. If you think Joe Biden and Donald Trump are the same thing, you've been brainwashed. And reclaiming that hope is a really cool idea.
Yeah. You have friends who listen to Joe Rogan.
No, everyone listens to Joe.
I know.
It's insane. He's such a dick, and he's so popular.
Slight tangent, but I mean, I think also the problem is that everything's becoming politicized. Right?
Yeah. Oh God.
Climate is part of the culture war these days in every single respect. So I work on this electric vehicle website, and electric vehicles have become massively politicized. If you look at the US, right, it is really shocking to me how they're being used as a weapon. Saying EVs are against the working person that's going to destroy Detroit, and all this kind of stuff. It's like, it's not true.
There is a department at Fox that just goes, right, lads, this week, which insane thing have we decided is now liberal and that you can't have if you're a real red-blooded American?
Books.
But in books, it's democracy. It's just in.
Yeah, I mean, well, one thing to your point, one thing, and appreciate the approach that you're taking of optimism and hope. And one thing we like to do on the pod is just highlight examples of positive sort of lights in different sectors that folks are doing good work. A couple examples we brought up for these from this pod is like HURD, HURD. It's a new app that allows employees to anonymously rate their company's climate efforts. So that's really exciting. Protect Our Winters, that gets outdoor people to kind of protect the land that they love by promoting nonpartisan policies designed to protect our world. And the one I was interested to get your perspective on this, the C40 cities, and kind of this push to get 96 cities worldwide, they represent 20% of the global economy, all working together to drive climate action through collaboration and knowledge sharing. So I'm curious to hear, I'm interested in the city level, if you think we can sort of, move the needle and kind of, help the cause.
I mean, I think, collaboration in any form is great.
Yeah.
The thing is, it needs to be more than just a talking shop, right?
Yeah.
But coming back to the previous point, if there are cities which are experiencing 45-degree heat and they can't find ways to mitigate that, and then that's going to be relevant to more and more cities, around the world. What are the ways that they can learn from, the architecture and the design and all these kind of things? So I think, when we're tackling a global problem like the climate, it's good to approach it from a global perspective, and the solutions are definitely not just all born in London and California and Paris. They're
they're not.
They're literally around the world, and we need to take that on board. Really.
I'm gonna upset some people in Berkeley who think all the solutions come out of Berkeley. So careful.
Well, nearly all of them.
Yeah, exactly. Go Bears. Wanted to just kind of wrap up. We always like to ask about, your personal journey, and you've had an incredibly mosaic career: business owner, media operator, communicator. You worked in a variety of roles, including Vice Media Group, RIP, Vice Media. So just wanted to hear about your journey from studying modern languages at Oxford to where you are today, and specifically if you have any advice for folks who kind of are aspiring purpose-led communicators. And I'm particularly selfishly interested. I've always thought of climate tech as the next space that I would move into after this agency. And I know you kind of worked in that similar space. So yeah, just curious to hear about your journey.
It's taken me a long time to kind of like focus in, I suppose, on climate as being the kind of green thread of everything I'm doing now. But so I studied. I've always been fascinated with language and the way that language can make people respond and the emotions that it elicits. So it was almost natural that I ended up studying languages, which have been completely useless to me in a professional context.
Which languages do you speak?
French and German.
Okay.
And English sometimes. But the thing is, the language of business is English these days. And actually, people in Germany and to some extent in France, put us to shame in terms of their use of English, right? So, but as an intellectual thing, that was great to do. I then didn't really have any idea what I wanted to do, and ended up kind of doing work experience in all sorts of different places, and eventually I landed in an agency called KVH, which was bought up many years ago, on the day that Classic FM was launching, which ages me, and the prize money for the Wimbledon Tennis Championships was being announced, and it felt like the centre of the universe. It was a very cool place to kind of land. It's like, okay, right, agency life seems great. These are very cool clients. I'd love to work here. So stayed there for a couple of years, and then moved to an agency called Hill & Knowlton, which is part of WPP Group, and kind of worked on big clients, blue chip organizations, some of which have been mentioned in this, podcast. And I ended up kind of like being responsible for their business development and marketing across the Europe, Middle East and Africa region, and set up my own agency with naivety, thinking, how hard can this be? So I've been where you guys are, and it was great. So with my colleague John Rivet, who was also at Hill & Knowlton, we set up an agency that kind of took advantage of the great talents of freelance people across all different kind of sectors and specialisms, and we were quite early to the market in doing that, so we got a fair amount of traction, which was great. Eventually sold that agency to Next 15 Group, and I stayed there for a few years, and then moved to Vice, which was great. I loved Vice. It was amazing. With my colleagues Lars Hemming Jørgensen and Frederick Anderson, we set up a new platform called Change Incorporated, which was all about working with big international companies to change their approach to how they're doing business, and which was amazing. And and that was how my kind of trajectory with Reset and the various other things I'm doing was born, really, coming out of Vice.
Wow. Vice is one of those companies, like, even, people will have opinions about it, but like, I feel like I've shared more of their content than like most media platforms because of, I think, like how real it is, how useful it is, how, I think it's a bit edgy, but it's also relatable in a lot of ways. So just appreciate,
eye level.
That's okay. Is that like
that was always the Vice thing. It's kind of like, by the audience, for the audience.
I like that.
The first 5-10 years was genuinely revolutionary. When it went a little bit off the ball towards the end, but it always happens.
That's when I started.
No one's sequel ever. But the first 5 years was like, oh shit, no one's ever done media like this. This is very, very cool. Yeah, I like that concept of eye level though. That's really, it's like, humble in a way, but also like connects to the audience and gives you purpose behind your content there. So, well, great. Well, this has been another fantastic. Sorry to do this twice. It's just as nice the second time, y'all. But this has been another fantastic episode of Tech Can't Save Us podcast, brought to you by Little Humans. We've had the incredible Dominic Shales, the founder and CEO of Reset Media, who's doing incredible work in the space of industrial decarbonization with Carbon Re, and specifically the cement industry and kind of attacking that industry, which represents 8% of global emissions. So thank you for the work that you're doing on behalf of people on the planet. Really appreciate you being here.
Well, thank you. That sounds very grand.
It is very grand. Where can folks find out more about your work, Carbon Re, and just where they find you on the interwebs?
So I think, like everyone, I'm on LinkedIn. Very easy to find there. Carbonre.com is the website for Carbon Re. NexusClimate.pc, and both of them are on LinkedIn as well. So please do come, follow, connect, all of those things.
Is there a holding page for the new site you're going to launch?
Not yet.
Not yet. Oh, well.
Yeah, I bought it though. So
Give
you
me.
can't get in.
We're gonna beat you to how full of shit. It's coming. And as always, folks, please like, subscribe, give us a strong rating so we can keep bringing on amazing guests like Dominic. And yeah, we really appreciate all your followership and listenership. So we love you. Thank you.